Incoming transmission. Initiating data compilation protocol. Compilation complete. Enhancing. Initializing data playback. Code Alpha. Begin playback.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Big Giant Head podcast, episode 4 for July 25th, 2016. I'm Matt Fitzgerald, and where the hell have I been over the past couple months? I have not put one of these out in a very long time, and I'm sorry about that. Man, I had a handful of really annoying things happening during June. Our AC wasn't working, and like it was leaking everywhere and stuff, and I kept calling the maintenance guys in the complex and harassing the office to send somebody up to fix it, and they did. Like, they kept coming up and tried several different things and stuff. So it was always kind of a weird situation where I was like, well, I guess I could record, but then it's going to be loud because people are running in and out of our apartment trying to fix the stupid AC. So I just kind of, I lost my stride. Felt frickin' hot and sweaty because we're sitting in here and temperatures getting up, past like 85 degrees and stuff. So I was just being a big baby. None of that is an excuse for not doing the podcast, but it is a reason. But when I lose my stride like that, I start to get like embarrassed about my content, and I've got like time to kind of think about things and be like, why do I like to draw the pictures and make the podcasts and stuff, and kind of put my crap out there, and my super sensitive side starts to get embarrassed and too shy to do it. So yeah, just been wimping out essentially. But here we go. Here's another one to put on my YouTube channel. So yeah, still enjoy doing it, but I gotta shake the cobwebs off. So yeah, guys, sorry for my absence. But anyway, I guess it's kind of nice when I in a certain way, it's nice to not have this extra stuff to do, because then I just sort of quietly keep my head down and just grind away on Savage, which can be fine. It's fine. It can be a fine thing. But anyway, what's going on with me lately, other than the obnoxious air conditioning situation? Been going back to the gym. That's another thing that I tend to pick up and put down. But I always notice a marked improvement when I stick with it over the course of a couple days. My body tends to adapt to it real fast, which is nice. The first session, going back after a while, is always painful. Second one, I start to get kind of back in the groove of things. Like, oh, I can kind of do this longer. I can lift more. And then third one is like, oh, that I don't know why I was being such a baby before, but because this my body seems to be taken to this pretty well again. So I guess I gotta kind of enjoy that rate of improvement, while it lasts. So yeah, I've been doing that. It helps my body just regulate in general too, but it helps cut down on how uncomfortable I feel in the heat and all that stuff, and the allergies too. The allergies are still kind of burning and pillaging their way across my system. Same thing with Bo, my wife too. On occasion she gets a weird eye thing out here, which has never happened before we moved out here, which is kind of funny. But there you go. Allergies are still a pain in the ass out here. But we did get, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but we did wind up biting the bullet and getting an air purifier. Oh yeah, I don't know if the mic is picking that up, but there's a pretty good storm that hit maybe a few minutes ago, and I was like, I'm going to record a podcast, and it started storming like crazy, and I was like, I'm going to maybe wait for a second to see if I lose power, which I kind of do sometimes out here. It's not out of the question as it happens frequently enough out here in Austin when a storm hits us, that I will lose power. So I was like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. But it's mostly passed now. But I don't know if some of the thunder's picking up on the mic. I can't really hear it in the headphones, so maybe not. But anyway, yeah, going back to the gym, still fighting the allergies. The gym always helps with regulating that stuff or mitigating the obnoxiousness of the allergies. It just helps everything, man. Gotta remember to get up away from the desk and go work out. Still using the WorkRave application to remind me to get up and do something every 20 minutes or so. So that is always a huge help. Maintenance. Maintenance is the key to stemming off those weird tendon related aches and pains I get when using the keyboard for too long, keyboard and mouse stuff, sitting at a desk and all that. But yeah, things have been generally quiet over the last couple months. I was playing a lot of Dark Souls, but I definitely burnt myself out on it by the time Dark Souls 3 came around, and I was going through that. So I haven't been playing a whole lot over the past 2 months, but through July, or I should say through like May and June, but I recently started fanboying out all over Blizzard stuff. What happened was I downloaded Hearthstone, and holy crap, that's an awesome game. Even just presentation alone, it's full of any kind of bell and whistle you'd want, which is great for me right now, especially where Savage is in the stage of development, because I have to start really paying attention to little presentation issues. You know, there's a ton of stuff in Savage that could do with some juice as far as UI elements and quality of life sort of things. And Hearthstone is a great sort of study for that. But then I was looking at Heroes of the Storm. I was like, oh, that's free too. I'm going to give that a try. And just Blizzard for me generally always knocks it out of the park. Ever since when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of Blackthorn because I never owned a copy of the game, but my stepdad owned an exhibit business, so they'd put together exhibits for different companies for trade shows and things. You know, like they do Sony booths and stuff, and booths for video game companies at E3 and everything. So I'd always kind of get to go with him and my mom, who also worked for the company, and we'd be staying at hotels and stuff, and along with movies on demand and things like pornographic material being able to be purchased in your hotel room, there was usually like kind of a video game sort of rental system there as well. Like there'd be this weird sort of pseudo Super Nintendo controller or gamepad that was wired like directly into it's either the television set or like a box to the TV or something. And you could rent games through that service as well. And Blackthorn, for whatever reason, was like always one of the options on there. So I'd play Blackthorn, and I thought it was like the raddest thing ever because it was orcs with machine guns, and you're some crazy like buffed out, black-haired, Peter Steele-looking guy with a shotgun shooting orcs and saving or shooting slaves as well. So those were good memories for me as far as Blizzard goes. And of course Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 1 and all that stuff. So it's kind of neat to play Hearthstone and Heroes and see that these guys are still, on the top of their game pretty much. I haven't tried Overwatch. I haven't picked up Overwatch at all. I know that kind of took the internet's and the general video game industry by storm over the past couple months. I haven't tried it out, but what I did do was jump back into World of Warcraft. The wife and I saw the Warcraft movie, which I thought was pretty cool. The effects were gorgeous. Narratively speaking, it was a little rocky, but there were definitely moments in there that I enjoyed. It had everything that I would have wanted. 12-year-old, 13-year-old me would have just adored this thing. And I did in a lot of ways. It was really cool to get to see a lot of those characters that I grew up with. Reading about in the Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2 manuals, those awesome big chunky thick manuals with all the awesome artwork by Metzen and Samwise and stuff. Seeing those characters running around on the big screen, and it was something I always wanted to see as a kid, like all the awesome watching all the awesome cinematics that Blizzard would put in their games. It's super funny going back and watching, like, for example, like the Warcraft 2 cinematics now, because they look horrible by comparison. They look worse than that like reboot TV show, or about the same, I guess. But yeah, man, super cool to finally see orcs and footmen duking it out on the big screen with some surprisingly like pretty fantastic violence on display there. I was kind of surprised for a PG-13 movie. There's some pretty spectacular brutality going on, which is what you would want from, orcs versus humans. But yeah, enjoyed that. That got the wife and I kind of itching to play some Warcraft. She hasn't jumped in yet, but it was interesting to go back to my characters. Or my one character, I should say. I only have had one guy, one orc warrior, of course, who I've kind of stuck with. I don't think I ever made it past, like, say, level 20 with any of my other characters that I created off to the side, my alts, if you will. But again, man, like the changes that they've made to that game are just astounding. And to think that this is a game that's been around since 2004. And they continue to update on it and stuff. Like, just recently, they launched a patch to get ready for their next expansion, which is Legion. They released a pre-patch that updated a lot of the animations and everything, and a lot of the sound design too. I don't really hear anybody talking about the sound design, which is kind of a pity because the sound design is freaking amazing. My orc warriors, he's screaming and yelling in ways that I had never heard him scream and yell before. The animations are great. All the new animations that they put in the game for melee characters, especially, just makes the combat feel so much weightier and better and good. So that's where I've been getting my video game fix through July. It's super nice to have this crazy expansive world to jump into. After I put in like 8 hours, 9 hours a day working on Savage or something, going and playing something that was made by a company that kind of made me want to do this stuff in the first place. It's like Nintendo and Blizzard were the big ones when I was a kid. It was like, I want to do what those guys do. I want to work at Nintendo, or I want to work at Blizzard and make orcs. Because I have that ridiculous orc fetish, thanks to Blizzard and Games Workshop. So yeah, I have them to thank for that. But yeah, I mean, you look at Warcraft and it's got the same spit and polish. Of course, over the years, they've removed things that have made me super salty. In my opinion, they've taken stuff out that felt a little essential, at least at the time when we had them. Felt a little essential to the RP in the RPG. But I guess that's neither here nor there. But just we're talking about polish. That game has it in spades anymore, man. Like, people like to get salty about it because they removed X and Y, but I just melt when I look at the new animations and hear the new sound design and see the new user interface improvements and stuff. It's fun to look at and it's fun to study given what I'm doing. It's like, why is this fun? Why is it fun to push these buttons over and over again? And it's like, well, because you have this amazingly, gorgeously, visually fleshed out world with character models and asset models that look like you're running around in a Don Bluth production or something, and everything's really well animated and well textured, and it's got a very timeless look to it that will, that has continued to make it look somewhat relevant, at least. It's not photorealistic, so they're able to get away with certain things. But yeah, man, the new animations are gorgeous. Great feedback when you hit a button and you see your guy swing his axe and it hits something. Feels nice and juicy and meaty and I love it. Just love it. But anyway, yeah, Blizzard is definitely, anymore when you look at all this stuff, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Warcraft, Overwatch, StarCraft, and Diablo 2 as well. Not Diablo 2, but Diablo as well. You can see that they're just kind of building more of a hobby than anything else. Like, Blizzard is a hobby now. It's not just like a bunch of isolated games. Everything has sort of like a crossover to a degree, especially when you get into Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm and Warcraft. You can get certain rewards that unlock in the other game and vice versa, and it's just a neat thing. It's definitely filling that hobby itch that I have, where I maybe don't have the time or the patience to bust out some Games Workshop miniatures and go down and buy a bunch of paint and spend the time to clean up the models anymore, which I'd love to get back to someday. But right now, Warcraft kind of facilitates that. It gives me kind of an easy path to just kind of jump in and play with some other people and friends and stuff. And I've met some interesting people too since I started to play again. One guy in particular, in a guild that recently invited me to join them, he writes fantasy and science fiction books, and I was very impressed because he does like 4 books a month. Which is just crazy in and of itself. And he does a series called The Prophecy of Axain, Axain. So if you're looking for something new to read within the fantasy genre, go check that out. He's got all his stuff on Amazon. I will link it in the show notes. Just a cool guy to play with, to hit things in the face with an axe with in game, and to find out that he's an entrepreneur, and he and a creative one at that. He does writing within a field that I enjoy. So it's just cool, man. It was cool to meet somebody like that and to check out their work on Amazon. I haven't picked a book up yet, so shame on me. But yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes and the video description and all that, and you can go and have a peek, have a gander. So, World of Warcraft is awesome. Blizzard is awesome. Still, and that's something that I would eventually like to work my way up toward, is producing a product that has that level of polish and sheen and attention to things like presentation. So yeah, man. On the development side now, but also still speaking of World of Warcraft, I have a friend who streams creative writing on Twitch, and her channel is 6-Foot Gelfling, and she does a really interesting thing. I think it's once a week where she does creative writing for a number of minutes, and she'll just kind of write. People will suggest or request songs in the channel, and she'll write a short story with the music playing that sort of inspires the words that come out of her fingers, I guess. But she did a really interesting stream last week. She is in a role-playing guild on World of Warcraft. I forget the realm name now, though. But she was talking about producing custom content for to sort of liven up your role-playing experience. And she posed this sort of interesting challenge of creating a sort of a cipher system, like a table of words and each letter, I'm sorry, not words, letters. Like you have your alphabet, and each one corresponds to a rune or something, and the placement of the letters and characters would be defined by a special key that you would plug in. So like, maybe the key is Stormwind, and then it would rearrange the letters on the table based on the word Stormwind. So like character 1, would be S, character 2 would be T, character 3 would be O, so on. And you would need that key in order to get the corresponding letters based on the runes you were given. If any of that makes sense. I don't know if I explained it well enough or not, but I was like, I could just freaking make you a program where you could type in your key and it would, auto kind of generate your word table for you. And then you could create, a little riddle or something that would be translated into your runes. So when somebody was given the key, they could plug the key in and they would get their table, and that would help them solve the riddle. Easy enough, but I've been working on it like after in my free time, and it's posing some interesting challenges to me, especially working with strings and stuff, which are like a string of characters or letters, and that's something that I haven't really explored in Savage development too closely, and it's some stuff that I do have to go back and fix because there are a bunch of UI elements and stuff that need polishing and changing, especially like in the character creation screen on Savage when you got to put in your name and all that stuff. This is kind of turning me on to certain things, exploring certain problems that I haven't tackled in Savage yet. So it's kind of nice to have this weird experimental tiny little project thing to figure some of this stuff out in, so I don't go into Savage and break a bunch of code. It's nice to have a separate sort of playground for problem solving for this sort of stuff. So it's turning into an interesting little thing. I don't think I've put too much, more than like a couple hours into it so far. But yeah, it's fun. It's a nice kind of change of pace that is making me excited to go back and fix like the name entry screen in Savage and stuff. Because right now it's kind of a pain in the ass. Like you have to use your keyboard, for example, in Savage as you would like a gamepad. Like you use the arrow keys to navigate the letters and characters, and you use like whatever the accept button or the confirm button is. So like on an Xbox 360 pad, like the standard confirm button is the A button, right? The green button. And then B is usually like back or delete or cancel. So I have corresponding buttons set up on the keyboard. So like, space is the confirm button, which feels really weird when you're trying to input like a name or something. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do with the name entry screen is just allow you to use the keyboard, not even worry about, navigating with the keyboard or anything like that. Just frickin' type. Allow somebody to type it in. And if they're using the gamepad, like also just support the gamepad functionality like you would in a JRPG from Super Nintendo or Nintendo or something. Like a Dragon Warrior game where you're selecting a character with the D-pad, and then you hit, like A to confirm a character or something. So yeah, it's forcing me to kind of think about stuff like that, which is nice. Because it's something that hasn't been done yet, and then I need to do it. So yeah, there's that, which is kind of neat. And then I am excited to put it in her hands so she can, she and her guild members can use it to sort of customize their own little like role-playing adventures and stuff, which is pretty neat. That's something that I used to do all the time back in 2004, 2005. I had made a guild. And now I forget on which server I had started to, but I started a guild, and it was a big time role playing guild, and I would even then I was trying to sort of game master it. Like I'd make alts, I'd make alternative characters and stuff who were supposed to be bad guys that my guild had to go find and defeat, and it would usually have to be in a duel or something because we couldn't do like cross faction stuff. Like I I've always been a horde player. I always made, like I said, I have that orc fetish. So usually any character that I wind up wanting to create is an orc in some capacity. So I wasn't able to make like an alliance character that would be able to sort of PvP with members in the guild that I had. But I'd create, bad guy orc characters and stuff that were usually part of my own custom quest that I'd make that the guild members had to go and complete. They'd be given a reward for it or something. So yeah, watching my friend talk about this stuff gave me all those little kind of nostalgic feels and stuff, and I was like, that's so cool. I love it when you can sort of bend the game system to your bidding in a way, try to find fun and creative ways to create your own custom content. So this is kind of a fun way, and I'm excited to give this to her and her guild. So yeah, name entry stuff is going to benefit from this in Savage, and general UI improvements and stuff are on the table for things that I need to apply all of this experimentation to. So straight up Savage development now. Over the past couple months, I've been adding new enemies to the game. I know that I've been talking a bit, at least in my dev blogs, about how a lot of the content in the game, or a lot of the hostile content in the game, like enemies and hazards and stuff, are not necessarily platformer friendly. And by that I mean there's a lot of enemies I have in the game that aren't learnable in the sense that like a Goomba from Super Mario Brothers is learnable. Like he'll always walk back and forth, and if he hits a solid object, he will turn the other direction and go the other way. So as Mario, after you've run across a Goomba or two and observed their behaviors, you kind of always know what to expect. Now that is true in a way with Savage, because if the more you encounter a certain enemy, you will start to see what he's capable of, like his different animation sets and how he swings his weapon and where he chooses to strike, and how he if he jumps, if he doesn't jump, if he runs back and forth, or if he charges you. But there's still on a somewhat random. There's still some RNG in there. There's still some random behavior generation that's going on. So I have since added things like spike traps and stuff, where you'll always see this thing on the ground like a panel, and if you step on it, like maybe a quarter of a second later, some spikes will pop up, and if you remove yourself from the vicinity of the trap, the spikes will gradually go down again. So those are in place. I've added slimes. Slimes are now in the game. I think probably because I was nerding out on the recent Dragon Quest anniversary, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking put slimes in the game, because it's not a sword and sorcery game unless there are slimes. I always kind of remember being a little disappointed whenever slimes were sort of a level 1 kind of entry level bad guy. But slimes are fun, man. Like, I'm starting to come around to the slime thing. The cult of slime. So yeah, my very basic slime is pretty much like he behaves a lot like a Goomba, or like the slimes in Zelda 2. And I went out of my way to give it some animation tweaks and sets that reflect my my nerd boner for Zelda 2. They do the little super fast jiggle thing when they're about to hop forward, or anything like that. So they're much more learnable style of enemy, like I wanted for to make platforming feel better. It's like, oh, there's the thing. It's essentially a moving hazard as opposed to an AI driven enemy or something. I added apes, big ape monster guys that have a behavior set where they will stand in place and they will just lob boulders that they dig up out of the ground. So in a way, as long as I set them to I have a variable that they can check that's called thrower. If he is a thrower, he will always stay in place and he will always lob stuff at the player, and it makes for some it spices up the level design for sure. and gets to that platformer specific style of gameplay that I think Savage has been lacking up until this point. Because they kind of act as a turret now, and they create this very learnable sort of arc of danger. He'll throw a boulder, and you always know that it's, the boulder's always going to behave a specific way and travel through the air in a specific way, and every 2 or 3 seconds that guy's going to throw a boulder at you. The apes can also be set to be not a thrower, and then they kind of have a bit more of a melee kind of back and forth style of engaging the player, but they're not quite like the more humanoid or human-based enemies in that the ape will just kind of like leap towards you, and that's a very learnable pattern too. But when he gets within range of the player, he has a couple different attacks that he can, that can process. Platformer style enemies, like moving platformer style enemies. There's like a wasp now that has a big sort of bio construct on its back that acts as a platform, but underneath is the the wasp thing that's kind of moving back and forth, and he's got a bunch of different traversal styles that I can tell it to do. Like he can move in a box, like a square sort of pattern, in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion. He can go up and down. He can go left to right. They also have like a stinger underneath, or like a big fat insect abdomen that if the player is underneath and is a certain distance from, the wasp will stop and sort of squeeze out a spike that can fall on the player and hurt him and stuff. So it's dangerous underneath. It's safe on top. So there are these things that are very learnable now that are in the game that make it feel very satisfying. I've since added another horror type enemy. So the enemies in Savage are classified as they're beasts, they're insects, they're humans or humanoids, or they are horrors. So horrors are the more like kind of H.P. Lovecraft from the nether beyond regions of space and time sort of things. And this thing plays into this whole platformer-friendly theme of being a much more of a kind of an obstacle than an actual, level or spatially aware bad guy. It's got like a claw that attaches to the ground or the wall. Excuse me. And has segments that's sort of chain their way up to a headpiece. So it's kind of like classic like Ghouls and Ghosts style enemies where in Super Ghouls and Ghosts there was an enemy that was really obnoxious. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but they were like skeletal bird things, like a bird head that sort of floated around and would spit stuff at the end at the player, or try to bite him or something. I can't remember exactly their behaviors, but same sort of thing. Like each segment is its own object, but it stays relatively in place depending on where the claw is and where the head is. So the head will try to bite you, but that's pretty much its only behavior. Like it'll try to bite you. You can smack it away with a shield bash and it'll stun it. You can jump on its head as long as the head doesn't have a spike on it. So it's pretty basic stuff, but it's very satisfying because the chain of segments up to the head is pretty lengthy. So it kind of impedes the player from just attempting to just run past it or jump over it. Like you can't really jump over it because it's got a pretty long reach. So it sort of creates these little beats in the gameplay where it's like, okay, I got to stop and figure out how to get around this guy or just hack it to pieces. Everything stays in a relative position to the claw as well. So wherever the claw goes, all the segments in the head will kind of stay in this sort of relative position, also based on their horizontal and vertical speed too. So it's kind of neat. Like if I wanted to, I could make a much bigger enemy or like sub boss or mini boss or something and have 3 of these, for example. Klingjaw is what I'm calling the bad guy. Klingjaw enemies whose claws are stuck to this, central mass. And the mass could probably move around and have its own behaviors, but then the claw monsters almost act as independent sort of heads to the thing, which is kind of neat. Like I'm like, I might do something extra with this, maybe. But for now, I'm still in level design. I don't want to call it hell, but man, I mean, needless to say, level design is hard, very challenging. But I'm having a lot more fun with these new enemy types, putting them in the game because they kind of act as sort of mobile hazards and things that make traversal a little more interesting. Because before, all I really had was the cave beetle and the rock biter enemy. The rock biter is kind of like a wall crawler, like you would see in Metroid or something. It can kind of slime its way across the floor, and if it comes to a wall, it'll climb the wall, it'll climb the ceiling, etc. So those were the only really like enemies that sort of facilitated that kind of function. But now I have an extra amount of other ones that make for some really interesting encounters too. And when you mix up things like, say, the gorilla that stays in place and throws rocks at you, then you can mix it up with some other more area specific or area aware enemies that are a little bit more heavy on the RNG, and it creates this interesting thing where it's like you always know that there are going to be boulders flying at you from above or something because there's an ape up there tossing them at you, but you also have to manage this other enemy down on the ground on your level that you're kind of getting into a scuffle with, so you got to be watching them as well as the boulders up top that always have this sort of predictable pattern. So it's fun. It's interesting. So that's what I'm doing. Is I've got 2 more brand new areas and levels that are sort of themed around these sort of platformer type enemies. One is a very deep forest type area that right now the working title for it is, or the working name for it is Devil's Shade, because it's a very deep forest with a dense sort of canopy. And then that sort of leads down into a sort of a subterranean kind of forest. So I'm able to take these assets that I've already made, like trees and stuff, and I can flip them on their y-axis and create almost like wooden type pillars that are trees that are growing up from the ground and into the ceiling, which makes for an interesting look. On a similar note, I can take the grass and put a bunch of grass tiles on the ceiling, like flip them on their y-axis and make a cool sort of upside down ground level, which is kind of neat. It has a cool look to it. So that's something that I can do without having to make brand new assets and stuff. That's kind of fun. So those are going along pretty nicely. Overall, though, the overworld map is probably about 25% of the way content complete-wise. 25% to 30, maybe. 30 is probably being a bit too generous, but I still have to do the Gosen Highlands. The Devil's Shade leading into the underground forest type area, that's part of the Highlands. It's kind of the bridge area between the first area, which is the Gosen Plains, out into the Highland type area. But yeah, still grinding away on that. What else? Got Devil's Shade and the underground forest. I've kind of reworked the day-night cycle, the way it's drawn and the way it's rendered and everything, which kind of scared me a little bit because of the way that GameMaker handles 3D. Because as you know, the overworld map is a 3D room or a 3D environment, and I changed the way the day-night colors are drawn to the screen. It used to be that I just had this object that drew a semi-transparent square, or rectangle over the game view. So if it was nighttime, it would draw a semi-transparent, blue-tinted rectangle that you could see through, but you could still see the game. But it got really hard to see things. in certain situations, like especially like the dead of night or like during dusk when everything's got a little bit more kind of an orangey red kind of tint to it. It made the game very hard to look at. So what I did was I completely got rid of that system. I got rid of it and I reworked it so that the actual application surface is now just getting blended with certain colors. And I can sort of have or fractionalize. That's my idiot way of doing the math talk. I can cut down on the color that's being blended with, the white registry of the color that the main game view is being drawn at, which is nice because I can make just kind of subtle. I can subtly inject some red and some orange, or a combination of red and orange that gradually changes based on the time of day, so I can get some really nice kind of sunrise colors out of it, and then midday, it doesn't blend with any color, and then the sun sets, and then you get some really cool sort of purplish orange stuff that goes from like pure orange all the way to purple, and then from purple to dark navy sort of blue. And now I'm experimenting with light sources and the way that the day-night color system draws when there's a light source nearby. And it's similar to the way I've been doing darkness, like in caves and stuff. If there's darkness, then it is just a rectangle that's drawn on the screen with holes punched out where there is like a torch or something, or a candle. And I'm kind of doing the same thing now with the day-night system, where I'm drawing a duplicate of the application surface, which is kind of the end of the draw pipeline, right? It's like where all the game assets are finally drawn to the screen. I'm creating a duplicate of that and layering on top the application surface that is being blended with day and night colors, and then punching a hole out there with wherever there's a torch if you're in a 2D sort of platforming zone. And it looks cool, man. Like it looks a lot closer to what I had originally envisioned. So that stuff is almost done, or that system, I should say, is almost sort of complete. It's almost to a state where I can be like, okay, that's the version that the game is going to ship with. Likewise, I've redesigned the seasonal layer system. So before, I had this really convoluted, very overly complicated system where if you were in the overworld map and you ran into a bad guy, right, it would produce a randomly generated action platformer stage. And it would check what biome you were in. So like whether or not you were in Gosen Highlands, or if you were in the desert, or if you were in the Red Steppe or something like that, then it would pick and choose which sort of tile layers it would hide and which it would draw. And also it would check what season. So if it was winter, it would show the snow layer. If it was fall, it would show like the dead leaves, sort of the orange and brown dead leaves on the ground, and more orangish grass, stuff like that. A lot of that got really complicated, and I just got rid of all those extra layers, and now I'm just going to do rooms that are mutually exclusive to their biome. So before it was like it always had this same grab bag of rooms that it could draw from no matter where you were in the game world. So the desert would always be picking and choosing the same rooms as the Gosen Plains, the grasslands, essentially. So they'd all have the same sort of geometry and stuff, but it would skin the room differently. I'm using skin for simplicity's sake. But yeah, there was just a bunch of extra crap in there that eventually made it unmanageable. It made it so that every single procedurally generated room that I made within GameMaker had like way too many layers to keep track of, and all that when you factored in, especially when you factored in the seasonal layers and stuff. Now I got rid of all that. So the desert will have very specific rooms that it draws from. Which, I mean, this is kind of nice, though. It kind of works out in my favor, so now I can have these sort of geographically or geometrically complicated rooms, the later on in the game that you get when you're out walking around in the field and stuff and you run into a bad guy or choose to investigate a certain area that will produce a random assortment of rooms and stuff. Like the Highlands can have much more sort of rocky terrain and things that you got to jump over and navigate. Whereas the grasslands, they'll be pretty straightforward. They might have some rolling hills and stuff and some ramps and things and stuff like that. And, if you're in kind of a heavily forested area, there'll be a lot of sort of jump through platforms in the background and stuff that, that would be like tree branches and stuff like that. And you go to the swamp, you'll have a lot more sort of like quicksand and water, like shallow water that you got to go through. Stuff like that, that would be very hard to manage if you just had, say 200 rooms that every biome was always picking from. So that has been simplified. So for me, it makes it way more manageable. So, especially the seasonal layers. Seasonal layers are now, like, I used to have very sort of convoluted names like, this layer is always green grass. Like, layer 2100 is always green grass. Now I have it so that instead of green grass, it's always its sort of default summer and spring weather tile set, no matter where you are. So, like, in the desert, it's always sand. In the Gosen Highlands, it's always kind of a mossy colored grass. In the red steppe, it's always this sort of brownish red grass, no matter what. Like, that's what that layer is. So like, yeah, before in a procedurally generated room, it would always have to pick based on the season. It's like, okay, do we draw this biome's version of summer weather or this biome's version of, snow and all this extra crap? It got really fiddly, and it's really kind of hard to explain, and I'm stumbling over myself trying to articulate it. So I'm sorry for that, but it's gotten way easier. I'm glad I finally went back and did that. I'm glad I finally went back and did the day-night drawing system and the seasonal drawing system. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now is working on getting the content that is in the game right now up to a release level of quality. I feel like I'm finally there where I can be like, okay, this is locked in now. Let's just try to make it good. Like what we have right now, let's smooth out the edges and polish things up. Which brings me to my next point is I really want to, within the next couple of weeks, get a new playable build out there for people to try. Give something to the backers, like the Kickstarter people and stuff, and the Groupies Greenlight bundle people, something to play, because I know it's taken so long, and I was naive to think that that I'd be done in a relatively quick amount of time on this, but that's just not the reality. It's taken as long as it's taken, and that's kind of that. I just kind of have to work at this pace, and it'll be done when it's done. But I mean, the good news is that whoever is curious about how this thing plays now is going to get to pretty soon here. So there's still some stuff that I want to include in it, like a save system. The save system has never been implemented because I didn't know what it was going to look like up until this point. The original public prototype thing that's just kind of been out there for the last couple of years, that several people have played and made videos about and stuff, that did not have a working save system in it. Because I relied on the original Game Maker pre-studio. So like Game Maker 7, Game Maker 8, Game Maker 8.1, all that. It had a built-in save system where if you ever did call it, like save game or whatever I think was the function, it would kind of just freeze the game. And the next time you loaded your game and you allowed the user to load their previous save, it was like a save state from an emulator, if you're familiar with that. But now they've gotten rid of that, and you kind of have to do it yourself, which I think is better. You have a lot more control over what's going on, and I think before you could wind up with really kind of bloated data and stuff. But now I can, at the start of every room, I can check for things like, oh, has the player already unlocked this door? Has the player already found this item? Has the player, done whatever in here that should be persistent? Then I can say, all right, delete this item or unlock this door or whatever, on when a room loads. Or don't spawn this boss because the player has already defeated this boss if they ever go back to that area where they initially had that boss encounter. But up until now, I didn't know what the save system would look like. But now that I'm starting to put these things in the game that are, you found this heart piece, for example, or you've found this legendary sword. Now I know what to look out for and how to kind of start to manage that in a save system. So when I release a playable build, I don't know if a save system will be, or an early version of the save system will be intact, but and it probably won't be 100%, obviously, until all the content is in there and I know what to account for. But I want to be able to give you guys one so that anytime you want to kind of play around with this sort of early playable build, you won't have to start from scratch every single time, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing is getting the content that is in a somewhat complete state to a what I would consider a release worthy level of quality. So yeah, anyway, Lunar Core Games asked a question on the last episode that I posted on YouTube. And I'm sorry, Lunar Core, that it's taken me so long to post another episode. But yeah, thanks for your question, buddy. And here it is. Lunar Core Games asks, do you have any sequels or spin-offs already planned, or is it a standalone story? I tend to go overboard and try to plan a whole universe before finishing a game. So do I, Lunar Core. I do have plans of kind of expanding the Shard of Gosen's sort of universe and exploring some more of the characters and lore and history and all that, because I love world building, man. That's part of why I wanted to do video games. Is I like fleshing out a history and a cast of characters and their lineages and a series of cultures that populate a world and all that stuff. So, absolutely, if this is reasonably well received, or maybe hell, maybe even if it's not, maybe if this is a complete failure, I will still have something to build on and sort of make a sequel for. So that's something I definitely want to do right now, where I am presently. So yeah, thanks for your question. Sorry it took me so long to get to it. Hopefully you're still interested in listening to these and you'll hear the answer. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing to go overboard and develop a whole universe and all that stuff. It makes things feel a little more real, Even little tiny touches here and there, like visual storytelling is a big one for me. Like as I'm going through the game, I'm certain rooms and certain areas I will populate with certain assets. Like maybe I'll create I'll put a little skeleton down there and put like a dagger close to his hand or something, and a bunch of rocks around him, like he got caught in a cave in and died there or something, and little things like that, like in the mining prison that is essentially the first sort of level in the game. There are rooms that I will make that are kind of in a like a branching path off from the elevator shaft. For example, there's a room with a bunch of crates in it and stuff and barrels and a table with a quill and some parchment and some gold coins and stuff, and it's like maybe that's like where the quartermaster is, and that's where they get their ingoing and outgoing goods and stuff. Like the miners, the mining slaves will kind of have their stuff that they've mined and put it on the elevator and bring it up, and the guy will catalog it, and then they'll ship it out, and then they'll get ingoing goods like food and weapons and stuff and maintenance items, and he'll kind of write that down on his little parchment and make a note of it, and pay whoever brought it in or whatever. So there's little things like that I kind of try to be mindful of as I'm designing these rooms. Like maybe this is a bear's cave, and there's bones in there and crap, and corpses of dead animals that it's been eating and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a good idea personally. As long as you're working on the stuff you're supposed to be working on, as well as kind of fleshing out your game world and everything. I just think it makes it feel like a real place. So good on you for planning out your universes and such. I like it. In my book, that's a good thing. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on with Savage and everything. I do have some fun stuff planned for Planet Tobor as well. I've been looking at the Planet Tobor site, and it's just so quiet. It gets sad because I used to be, doing my daily kind of comics and stuff, and doing podcasts like this, and doing devlogs and stuff, and things have kind of gotten quiet just because I've been a little burnt out on everything, and mostly just working on the game, and that's about it. And I'm starting to get that creative itch again, and want to kind of expand or flex my other sort of creative muscles because they've atrophied somewhat. But yeah, I want to find some more ways to kind of inform you guys on how Savage is going, and just have a little bit of fun surrounding it. So yeah, keep your eyes on Planet Tobor. And anyway, that's about it. So thanks everybody for listening. Take care. Go get some awesome work done. Download Game Maker Studio because it's free and you can start making games right now. I'm going to go make some awesome stuff myself. Again, thanks for listening. Take care and good luck.
No, baby. No, baby. Hey. When? Hey. No, baby.
What?